David had always thought his life was perfect. He had a beautiful wife, Emily, a successful career, and 2 children who were the light of his life. They had built a comfortable home filled with love and laughter, and David often felt grateful for the family he had. Emily, his wife, was everything he ever wanted, loving, attentive, and always supportive. But behind the closed doors of their seemingly perfect life, a storm was brewing. David began noticing small things. Emily's mood had been shifting. She seemed distracted, and their once vibrant conversations had become dull and distant. Still, he brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress of everyday life. But then one evening, things took a turn. David came home from work earlier than usual and walked into the kitchen where Emily was standing. Her face had a strange expression, and she was holding her phone tightly. David asked her about her day, but she barely looked up, her gaze focused on the phone screen. Something felt off, and David's suspicions grew. His mind raced. Why was she acting so distant? What was going on? Emily quickly excused herself, saying she was just tired, but David couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The following days were filled with tension. David tried to talk to Emily, but she brushed him off, insisting everything was fine. He knew deep down that something was wrong. That night, David couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, thoughts racing through his mind. What was happening with Emily? Why was she so distant? The next morning, as Emily left for work, David decided to take matters into his own hands. He went through her phone. What he found was more than he could have imagined. Text messages from a man, strange, intimate messages that were clearly not from any of her friends or family. The messages were flirtatious, filled with affection, and most disturbing of all, they were dated recently. David's heart raced as he scrolled through the conversations. His hands shook, his mind reeling in disbelief. Emily had been having an affair. David's blood ran cold. He stared at the screen in shock, the words swimming in front of his eyes. How long had this been going on? Who was this man? The questions flooded his mind, but there was no answer. Only betrayal. He had trusted her, loved her, and now his world was falling apart. He couldn't just let this slide. He had to confront Emily. He waited for her to come home that evening, his heart pounding in his chest. As soon as she stepped inside, he stood up and faced her. Emily, looking startled, asked what was wrong. David's voice shook with emotion as he held up the phone. "Who is he?" he demanded. "Who is this man?" Emily's face went pale. She stood frozen, unable to meet his gaze. "David, please let me explain," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but David's mind was already made up. "Explain? Explain what? You've been lying to me, to our family. How long has this been going on, Emily?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but David couldn't bring himself to comfort her. He was too hurt, too betrayed. Emily finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for it to happen, David. It just did. I never wanted to hurt you." But her words felt hollow. The pain of her betrayal was too much. His trust had been shattered, and he wasn't sure he could ever rebuild it. He needed time to think, to process this new reality. He couldn't understand why she did it, why she had thrown away everything they had built. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our latest videos. The following days were a blur for David. He could barely concentrate at work, his mind constantly consumed by the betrayal. He tried to maintain his composure around their children, but everything felt different. The house, once a place of warmth and comfort, now felt cold and empty. David couldn't help but replay the conversation with Emily over and over again in his mind. Her excuses, her pleas for forgiveness, it all felt so fake. How could she do this to him? How could she destroy the trust they had spent years building? Emily, on the other hand, seemed to be in a state of denial. She begged for forgiveness, pleaded with David to give her another chance. But David was torn. He loved her, but he could never look at her the same way again. The woman he had married, the woman he had trusted with his heart, was now a stranger. A woman who had lied, a woman who had cheated. The more David thought about it, the angrier he became. He began questioning everything, every smile, every hug, every moment of their marriage. Were they all just lies? Was any of it real? He spent sleepless nights wondering if he had been blind to the signs all along. Had Emily been hiding things from him for years? What else had she kept from him? David's emotional turmoil only grew worse. He began pulling away from Emily more and more, not sure how to deal with the situation. Emily tried everything to fix things, but the damage had been done. Her constant apologies felt like a cruel reminder of what she had done. David didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. He didn't want to hear her say she was sorry. It was too late for that. The trust was gone, and with it, any hope for a future together. One evening, David sat in the living room, looking at the family photos on the wall. He remembered the good times, the laughter, the love that once filled their home. But it all felt like a distant memory now. He couldn't reconcile the man Emily had been with the woman who had betrayed him. How could he go on, knowing that everything they had was built on a lie? As much as he wanted to save their marriage, he couldn't help but feel like it was beyond repair. Emily's affair had torn their lives apart in ways that couldn't be undone. The trust they had once shared had been shattered, and David didn't know how to move forward from here. In the end, David made the hardest decision of his life. He chose to leave. He couldn't stay in a marriage built on deceit and betrayal. As much as it hurt, he knew he had to protect himself and his children from further heartbreak. He packed his bags and told Emily that he was leaving. She begged him to stay, to work things out, but David knew it was over. The love they once had was now a memory, and no amount of apologies could fix what had been broken. As he walked out of the door, David felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and fear for the future. He had no idea what came next, but he knew he couldn't stay. He had to rebuild his life, to find peace again. The road ahead would be difficult, but David was ready to face it alone. He had to learn how to trust again, but that would take time. For now, all he wanted was a fresh start,